Naririnig ka namin, Luchi. Hello. Hello. Yes, I can hear you, but if I switch to English, can you tell me if you can hear me? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me, Luchi? Can you hear me?
I can hear.
Okay. Okay. Luchi, um, so this is what you have to do. You have to open another, you have to log in another gadget so that you can also access the original language, so you can hear Kakay when she's speaking. And that you have to log in. Um, tama, di ba? Ah, okay. Puwede naman palang hindi dalawang gadget, si Kakay na lang ang papuntahin namin sa Germany para nasa pareho kayong country. Oo. So, ah naayos lang namin kasi sabi ko dapat nasa English channel ka kasi nga English ang lengguwaheng
translate ni Luchi. Eh, yung Start na. Hi everyone, we're just experiencing a technical glitch, so if you could be very patient, we would appreciate it. Naomi, I saw you earlier on. Would you like to speak up and test your connection, please? Naomi, are you there?
Yes, I am there. Hi,
All
how are
right.
you?
Nice. Would you like to put on your video?
Okay.
There you are. So videos. I'd like to start.
Nakakasima. Alara. Ini. True. Say. Not a bogey. Yeah, well, day. Ini.
Hi Naomi, you can start whenever you're ready.
Hello, everyone. Before Naomi starts moderating the session, may we request that everyone will introduce themselves in the chat box by writing your name, your organization, and the country where you are located or where you are from. It would be good to keep in touch. So if you would also want to share your emails, then please feel free to do so. So this session is being moderated by Naomi. She is the chairperson of the task force involved in the community issues relating to documentation of historical and cultural institutions and other significant matters, including establishment of a museum and cultural center for the country government of Cajado. She is the founder of Arid Lands Institute, which is concerned with promoting sustainable utilization of land, raising awareness on environmental protection and conservation, and promoting resource tenure security, advocating for human rights of undeserved indigenous communities, raising awareness and support gender equality in access, control, and ownership of productive resources, and encouraging and promoting production and documentation of historical, cultural, and human interest material of historical significance. I'm Naomi, you can have the floor. You can have the mic now.
Hello? Can you hear me? Ah,
Yes, we hear you.
oh, you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, finally. I thought it was unmuted. I'm very pleased to be with the group. Um, um, I think this is a very important topic, at least for Indigenous peoples, relating to land and resources. And I don't know whether it is immediately that I need to introduce the person from Kenya, Jackson Ole Shah, to tell us about what's going on in their area, because they've had a lot of problems being evicted from their land, so that big business can take over the land and the resources. Should I go ahead and invite him? Jackson, can I invite you to tell us about land and resources and your issues? Are we hearing each other? Can you hear me?
Yes, we do hear you, Naomi. Jackson, is your connection all right?
Jackson, I know your experience has been a bit of a nightmare. You can take the 7 minutes to tell us what your experiences have been. Hello, Jackson?
I'm not seeing Jackson online. I think he probably still trying to get in. We can probably move on to the next speaker.
What do we do?
There's a next. There are other speakers that are already here from Colombia and Indonesia. Should we try Colombia? Colombia is Angelica. To
Hola,
Hi,
¿me escuchas?
can you hear me?
Hola. Hola, hola.
Hi.
Hola, we can hear you.
yes, yes, hello. We can hear you.
Hola.
Yes, we hear you. Would you like to introduce Angelica, Naomi? Or we can read it from our end.
Bueno, un saludo muy especial desde Colombia.
Hello, greetings from Colombia, from the Guajira. We're in the north of the country.
Con Venezuela.
We border with Venezuela and with the Caribbean. Our area is half a desert, and we have several areas inside the region, depending on the location. The climate, of course, changes depending on where we are. It's more or less desertic. I'm Angelica Ortiz, and I'm representing the Wahoo Women's Force. I'm the Secretary General.
Bueno, el tema que corresponde hoy creo que es una afectación que nos tiene a todos
The
los
topic we're tackling today is something very important that affects all Indigenous peoples all over the world. We're always trying to defend our territories because we've been affected by the action of many enterprises. We have the Terrejon mining area, for example, in Colombia, and it's owned by 3 main companies. We're being seriously affected by the project, and we're seeing how good practices have not been carried out.
Ante en el mundo. Pues lamentablemente se han desplazado más de 23 comunidades entre indígenas, afros.
Sadly, more than 23 communities have been displaced.
Lamentablemente las demás han
Only 5
desaparecido.
of them have been relocated, and the rest have disappeared and have been completely wiped out.
Se ha tenido muchas afectaciones a nivel cultural.
We've been seriously affected. Our culture has been affected. Also, our environment, our economies, etc. Specifically in La Guajira, in the region we're talking about in Colombia.
Ay, lamento, la conexión está un poco.
I'm sorry, my internet connection is not that good. Well, the important point is that our human rights have been violated several times, but we've gotten stronger. Our communities have gotten stronger. Our communities have tried to defend themselves from these enterprises. And we've seen how indigenous peoples in this region have been empowered. They know and they are aware of their rights. In the past, every people have fought alone, but now we're building a network so that we can fight together. And we've seen that this system, that this model has been repeated in many regions of the world. We see how this situation happens in many, many regions of the world.
Cambia el territorio, cambian los pueblos, pero las prácticas que tienen
So
todas las
the indigenous peoples, of course, are different, but the practices from the enterprises are always the same. We see how the projects of the enterprises affect the relations between peoples, between the communities. The enterprises tried to separate them, to isolate them. Many communities have been completely destroyed, and the relationships within these communities have always been seriously damaged. Many enterprises sell dubious policies to the people. Moreover, the compensation policies are not clear enough. So we see how the national government does nothing to avoid this situation and to try to solve the problem. Moreover, they position themselves in the side of the enterprises. Many policies have been accepted from the government, to suppress these social movements, but we are still speaking up for our rights.
que nos ha unido más es la falta de agua. La Guajira es una zona de
The lack of water
en la
has
cual el único
made us
directo que tenemos
work
es el río
together.
Villa,
We have the Rancheria
pretende ser
River,
desviado
and
por la empresa multinacional
they want to
para sacar 500 millones de toneladas de carbón que está
they want to
debajo
extract coal from the riverside, and they want to
denunciando todas las atropellos que
shift their course. So we're still
hay varios fallos de
speaking up for our rights.
y la honorable Corte Constitucional ha fallado
We're still complaining and reporting the constant violations of our rights. But we've not received support of the government nor of the court. More than 69 hectares of land have been taken from us
lamentablemente
in order to use them for the coal industry.
en este momento tenemos una temporada
Pollution has also affected us
igual a la
seriously.
problemática que tenemos en el territorio. En este
And this
momento
aggravates the situation.
los gases de efecto invernadero están elevados, pero también los gases de combustión
Greenhouse effect emissions are also rising.
el carbón cuando alcanza niveles
Of course, we all know the consequences of the coal industry,
en este momento
the
al caer
fossil
el
fuels.
carbón prendido se forma una nube como si esta nube fuera
There's a cloud
generada
of
por
pollution created also with the contrast to the cold weather.
de contaminación.
We're talking about
Se han
big
realizado estudios en cuanto a la
clouds of pollution.
de agua. Esto se ha realizado
According to many studies conducted in the region, the air quality is very, very poor.
y la otra de la universidad
These studies have been conducted by Germany and by the Cartagena University in Colombia.
denunciando sobre visibilizando la
We've been also reporting the problems that we have,
la
and
proteína
many consequent studies have been conducted as well
y se le hizo
regarding
estudio
the food issue.
el hígado y los ovarios y lamentablemente
Many research has been conducted on this topic.
en dos animales. Muchas gracias a todos, a todas por esta invitación.
We see how
Nos están viendo y escuchando.
people do not have access to proper food. Thank you for everyone listening. We are responsible, and we are the ones who have to speak up for our rights,
Económico, la próxima guerra va a ser por él.
because the next wars will not be waged because of money. It will be waged because of natural resources. Thank you very much for listening to me, and greetings from Colombia.
Thank you, Angelica. So may I ask now Naomi to please introduce the next speaker?
Okay.
Yes, Naomi, please go ahead.
So next speaker again. Who was the next speaker again? Okay, I still can't find Jackson. I'm trying to reach Jackson by phone. Let the next speaker go because I'm trying to reach Jackson by phone.
So,
Hello?
okay. So thank you so much. Our next speaker is Monica. Monica Anduan. She's the Policy Development and Advocacy Officer of the Aliansi Masyarakat Adat Nusantara, or AMAN. She's from Indonesia. She will discuss with us a specific case that they have covered during the time of COVID. Her organization is national in scope with 2,332 indigenous communities throughout Indonesia, with 17 million individual members. So Monica, you please go ahead.
Okay, I hope you all can hear me clearly. Good evening from Indonesia. Thank you, Manja, for introducing me and my organization, and also Naomi and all of the organizers. And I'm here to share the current situation of indigenous peoples here in Indonesia. And we all know that we are all affected by the COVID-19. And it's not only happened here in Indonesia, but in all of the countries in the world, and not only affecting the government, but also affecting the life of indigenous peoples. And COVID-19, if we talk about COVID-19, it's not only affecting we don't only talk about economic or access to health, but there are many other aspects that being affected by this pandemic. And indigenous peoples also affected by this pandemic because even before the COVID-19, the situation here in Indonesia was already unfortunate for indigenous peoples, whether the economic, social, cultural, or the existing regulations that are not in favor of indigenous peoples or the indigenous communities. And here I want to, well, there are many things happening now, many conflicts happening now, and there is like escalating number of conflict since the start of COVID-19. Before, there was already many conflict, but then with COVID-19, there are more, number of criminalization and etc. And I want to share a little bit about one indigenous community. They are called as Kinipan community, which are, I will share. I prepare one PowerPoint. Let me play this. So, okay, so I will share this one case that happened in Central Kalimantan, the one of the big islands in Indonesia, and this community is called Kinipan. Now they are facing a case with one big palm oil company. So I prepare this simple presentation. They are located in Lamandau district in Central Kalimantan, and it covers a huge area of customary land. And then this community is part of Dayak tribe. If you ever heard about this tribe, it's a big tribe who lived in almost in the whole area of Kalimantan Island, including a little bit of Malaysia. And then now they're in conflict with this one big palm oil company, which is called PT Sawit Mandiri Lestari, or we call it as PT SML. And it happened, have been there since 2004. So I put a short summary of what happened in that community, the chronology. So it's actually started in 2004. So in 2004, this community, the Kinipan people, they heard that there will be this one big company will operate in their customary land. At that time, this village wasn't formed yet because it's still part of another district. And then in 2007, the government expanded the area, and then that was when this village, which is Kinipan village, was formed. And the village is named after the community name, which is Kinipan. This in 2012, this company get their first permit. So for one company to get their concession for palm oil, they have to get like 3 permits before the concession, and then they get their first permit in 2012, and it covers a huge area, which is more than 26,000 hectares. Not only in Kinipan community, but also other communities that located in different sub-districts. And then so during that time, since 2004 to now, even until now, the community keep rejected the project. And in 2004, when so they get the permit also from the government. And then in 2004, they did their first land clearing on the customary land of customary territories of Laman Kinipan communities. And also in 2014, the Laman Kinipan people, they held internal meeting in that community, and they still reject the request for palm oil, the land clearing. But still, the company, together with the military and then police and local government, they came to that the community area, and they helped covering this PTSML to do the land clearing. So the Laman Kinipan people, they can do nothing at that time, even until now. And so they keep rejecting this project even until now. And then in 2018, they came to Jakarta because they want to file complaint to different ministries who are who are responsible for these permits. That they were the one who give the permit to this company. So in 2018, 8 representatives of this community came to Jakarta, and in Aman, it was myself and then one of my colleagues. We went together with this community to several ministries. The first one is Ministry of Environment and Forestry, the NHRI, Human Rights Commission, and then the Office of the Presidential Staff, which located in the Palace of the President. And then we went to see those 3 different ministries and government institution. But then even until now, there's no specific change being met, and these companies keep operating on their customary land. And surprisingly, but it wasn't so surprising because we did see that coming before, because many times the military and also police, they are guarding this project. of this company. So in 2020, just in August, there were six members of this community, including the member. We called him as FND Buhing. They are forcibly arrested by the government, and they charged as a theft because they confiscated the chainsaw of the company in order to stop their operation in doing the land clearing. So yeah, they were accused of being thieves because of that reason. So the company, together with the local government, and then company with the local government, were waiting for something to happen so they can use that reason to arrest the leader of this community. And by the time they did they confiscated the chainsaw, that was when this company and then the local government catch the chance, because that was the chance to, criminalize the member of this community. So they can say, oh, it's legal. The process of this arrestment is legal. So that's how it's going. And this is the coordinator of law ministry in Indonesia. We call it as we call him as Mahfud MD. So he responded this case, the criminalization of FND Buhing, and then it's very manipulated. Even the national government, they're being manipulated with this case, because the owner of this big company have close relation with the leader of with the governor of Central Kalimantan, and then the region of Lamandau. So it's really there, and it's hard for the community to go against this big company, which covered by also some people in the ministries and some of the politicians. So this is the maps of the concession of PT SML in Kinipan customary territory. So this community, actually, they did the land mapping already, and they have their land maps, because years before in Aman, we helped together with this one organization, also part of Aman, we call it BRWA. We help this community to do land mapping, so they can show it on document. This is our land, this is the border, etc., etc. So we get the map of the concession of PT SML, and if you can see the yellow one, that's where they do the land clearing already, and then this area, they will do the land clearing soon in this area. And then if you can see here, there's pink color, and then call it orange a little bit with yellow with dots, and then the green one, that's the land management of Kinipan community. So this one, the green one, is where the forests are, like the sacred forest, and then this one is the yellow one is Penyaduan. So Penyaduan is the village, and then Rima is like the plantation of the community. This is the picture of the area that they did the land clearing. It's just small area of their concession. So can you imagine how huge it will be? So this is the picture that we can get from that community. And then because of that, just recently their village was flooded, because they do the land clearing for a huge area. And here you can see this is ironwood. So that huge area was covered with ironwood before. And then they do the land clearing, and they took all of the ironwood with them. So they get the license also to get the ironwood. So the main purpose of this company is not only palm oil, but also to get that ironwood, because the price is very expensive. And then this is the picture of the flood that they had just recently. This is the village of Kinipan people, and then they are forced to do blockade to PT SML Consession, even though it's very risky. So here in Aman, we asked them to do that, but then again, we prepare our lawyer to be ready anytime soon if there is criminalization that happen in Kinipan. So this area is very risky for them, but they have no choice, so they have to do the blockade to the area of PT SML. And I mean, it happened since a long time ago, since 2004. It was already worse condition, right? But then just recently, there's this one law called Omnibus Law on job creation, ratified early October, and then enacted and signed by the president on 2nd November 2020. So this Omnibus Law worsening the situation of indigenous peoples in Indonesia. Well, not only indigenous, but also local community and labor, children, women, and all of the Indonesians are being threatened by this Omnibus Law. Why? Because for indigenous peoples, there will be escalated number of conflict because of this Omnibus Law. So, for example, in the environmental impact analysis, there will be no longer the involvement of environment experts. So it's not in the law anymore. It's very hard for us because even before, they only do that on the paper and not really implement the law. And then with the Omnibus Law, they make it worse. So the idea of Omnibus Law, this is actually international concept of law to integrate multi-sectoral law into just one law. So for example, this Omnibus Law can revoke the whole law, or you could just revoke some articles in one law. So in total, this Omnibus Law on job creation has revised 76 multi-sectoral laws at the national level, and they do that less than a year. That's how crazy it is. Because I mean, the idea of the Omnibus Law is good actually to end the multi-sectoralism, but then you cannot do that in a short time, and you have to involve the people in the drafting process. And for this Omnibus Law, they didn't involve indigenous peoples or local community or labor or any organizations. They didn't involve us. So it was only politicians, investors, and together with the government. So it's a close, it's untransparent process. So that's why we criticize this law. And then so the government also made a statement that this the enactment of this bill will provide at least, because the title of this Omnibus Law is on job creation. So they claim that this law will provide job for at least 30 million people in Indonesia. While in fact, this Omnibus Law will make worse the number of conflicts and land grab of indigenous people's land, which means there will be many more indigenous peoples who will lose their traditional occupation. So it's very contradictory from what the government said. And yeah, I think it's very unfortunate that here in Indonesia we have this omnibus law, and then we are still in the middle of COVID-19. So every time when we want to do like demonstration in front of the Parliament House, they will use COVID-19, that it is prohibited to gather in group, even for the demonstration, because of the COVID-19, that you will spread this COVID-19 because of the demonstration. So it's very hard for us here now in Indonesia, but there's no option but to criticize the government through policy brief or policy paper, something like that. And they keep ignoring the academe, NGOs, CSOs, they keep ignoring us. All of the science paper, they keep ignoring us, but then we still have to go against this omnibus law until one day, maybe we hope the president will revoke this law. Yeah, I think that's all. I hope I didn't take more than 7 minutes. Thank you.
I don't know whether I should introduce Kakai or Jackson.
Yes,
Jackson
yeah, I am.
says he's around.
Yes.
Oh, Jackson's here. Hello, Jackson.
Yes, how are you, Naomi?
I'm very well. Hello, everybody. Jackson is with us. Maybe you should give him an opportunity to tell us about. He comes from the Narasha Community Development Group in Kenya. It's a Maasai community that has had many issues relating to their land. And we'll give Jackson 7 minutes to tell us about their experiences. Please carry on, Jackson.
Okay, thank you very much, Naomi, and welcome all other participants in this meeting. In fact, it is a great opportunity to share our experiences in terms of indigenous people's impacts in this particular area. Narasha community is a community-based organization working actually to support the indigenous peoples around Naivasha area, especially the Maasai community, who are the original inhabitants of that area. And they have actually, over time, faced a lot of challenges in terms of land ownership in relation to development projects which are actually coming up in the area. The area is a first land where it has a lot of resources in terms of energy, in terms of mining, and infrastructure. And all these have actually affected the community. Just to introduce the land tenure system in this area, in fact, this is a land which was mostly leased land before independence. And most of the leaseholds were actually held by colonial settlers by then, who later on sold the shares to other individuals who claimed to have bought from them. It was unfortunate because the community were left without being considered in terms of getting land policies and land documents, and therefore they have actually inhabited the land as owners without any evidence or any document to show land ownership. Over time, around 1950s, 1960s, and 70s, there was actually a lot of exploration done in the area, which discovered the potential of geothermal in the area. And that led more companies actually to develop a lot of interest in this particular place. Being actually, the demand was actually supported by the presence of Lake Naivasha, which provided a lot of water, and so many flower companies also came up and grabbed land there. Due to all this, the community has never lived in peace. They have been actually facing challenges here and there, but the major problem came around 1980s up to now, when a power company decided actually now to exploit the resource. This brought a lot of problems. The community started facing challenges, being evicted. In 1984, there was a eviction and creation of Hell's Gate National Park, community lost a big chunk of land, and later on, they also faced other challenges. In 1996, they were taken to court by another community called Ngati, who decided actually to come and try to remove the community from the remaining land. But the community fought gallantly in terms of in court, and they won 2 cases, one in the High Court and the other case in the Court of Appeal. But all in all this has never been implemented. Every decision done by the court has never been actually implemented. Now, all these projects have come out strongly developing. Kenyan has several projects. They have almost 5 of them. There is Ormat International as one, producing 150 megawatts. And then there is plan for industrial park. There is a new power plant called Akira 1 coming up again there. And all this has actually impacted the community. We saw a group being relocated around 2009 up to 2012, leaving the community, causing the community actually to be resettled in a place which is not even suitable for habitation. That negatively impacted their livelihood. They made them lose their economic sources of income and so on. Therefore, all this impacted the community. Now these projects have taken advantage of the COVID-19 period, because now due to the restrictions in terms of movement, the community were not able to engage with most of these companies. And because of the fear of the spread of COVID-19, we saw in Kenya there are a number of people have been affected. They lost a number of people in the company. And therefore, all due to this, there was a kind of lack of interaction between the community and these companies. And therefore, there were internal activities which are going on in the company. And these are actually continued straining the issue of land ownership in the community. But all in all, the community are still strongly fighting on that, and try to push for actually implementation of policies which protect the community in terms of, for example, environmental policies, the issue of land, community land, policy, community land act, and so on. Therefore, the community have been struggling through all this. We have actually seen again a company called Kidong Ranch trying to grab a big chunk of land, 75,000 acres, which is inhabited by over 30,000 people, and they are trying to remove the community from that land. They have fenced the land, they have dug a trench, children has fallen under the trench, and one of them died. We lost the animals in the trench, and so on. There have been a number of protests causing some human rights defenders to be arrested, taken to court. Therefore, all these are some of the challenges the community have been actually going through. But we are strongly standing firm to defend the community, building capacity, building networks, amplifying the voice in the international levels, and so on. Therefore, our act now, or our request now to other partners is actually to work together closely to build the confidence of the community, to encourage them to be strong, especially in this time, especially when the COVID-19 is bringing more damage. The communities are not left out in terms of impacts of COVID-19. Some people are affected, although no one is already lost, but we are trying to educate them actually to also to be cautious on that. Therefore, all these are challenges we are facing as a community, in terms of a land issue, in terms of economic, in terms of our indigenous rights, our cultural sites, our traditional resources are being interfered, our religious sites, and so on. Therefore, as a community, we are still strongly fighting back to make sure that we own back what belongs to us. Thank you, Naomi. Let me stop there, unless I'll answer and if there will be questions. Naomi.
Unmuted me. Muted me. Okay, I said thank you, Jackson, for a good presentation.
Yes, okay.
Now, do we invite Kakai? I don't know whether Kakai is there. He's the next presenter.
Yes,
Kakai?
yes, I can start now.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Oh, gosh.
Pagbati ng kapayapaang nakabatay sa katarungan.
Greetings of peace based on justice.
Magandang araw, magandang gabi sa lahat
Good day,
ng
good evening to all, to fellow resource
salamat sa
speakers,
imbitasyon ng
and
FPIC
thank you to IPRI's invitation
na maibahagi
for
ko
me to have this opportunity to share the history of our struggle as Indigenous Dumagat against the construction of the dam project in the Sierra Madre Mountains. In my presentation, I will briefly discuss about the Sierra Madre Mountains and the Indigenous Dumagat.
Saan na po yung aking presentasyon? Okay. So, ito yung kasaysayan.
This is the history,
Kalaban sa dam
the
na
struggle against the dam
Sierra Madre.
of the Sierra Madre Mountains.
Next po. Makikita natin sa mapang ito
We can see the photo of
ng Sierra Madre,
Sierra Madre Mountain in the photo,
silangan sa
that it is found at the northeastern part of Luzon Island.
Pinakamahaba at magubat na bundok.
This is dubbed as the longest and most forested mountain in the entire Philippines and serves as a barrier in times of storms and other
Nakatunghay
calamities.
din ito sa karagatang Pasipiko.
It faces the Pacific Ocean and it covers 3 regions:
Valley,
Cagayan Valley, Central Luzon, Labarzon region,
Laguna, Batangas,
which are the
Rizal,
provinces of
Quezon,
Cavite, Laguna, Batangas, Rizal, Quezon.
Ang mga katutubong dumagat ay
The
may tatlong
Indigenous Dumagat have 3 groups:
Alta,
Agta,
dumagat, at ang
Remontado,
ang kinikilalang mamayang nakatira, namumuhay,
they are
nangangalat
known as the inhabitants who are residing,
ng
living, and nurturing,
aming mga ninuno hanggang
defending the long
kasalukuyan.
history of our ancestors until today.
Partikular sa katutubong dumagat,
Particularly for the Indigenous
ang bundok
Dumagat,
Sierra Madre ang pinagmumulan ng
Sierra
aming
Madre Mountain is the main source
ang palipat-lipat
of their semi-nomadic livelihood.
sandig.
Their survival depends on food gathering, hunting, fishing, shifting agriculture until today. It is also the basis of their being indigenous and inhabitants of the Sierra Madre and the Philippines.
Kaugnay sa usaping dam, ito
Regarding the dam
ay
issue,
nag-umpisa sa panahon ng next slide po. Ito po yung larawan ng
this is the
dalawang
picture
na-construct noong panahon ng diktadoryang Marcos. Next.
This was the dam that was started in the time of the Marcos dictatorship.
Sa panahon ng Marcos, nag-umpisa ang pagko-construct ng dalawang tunnel.
Was then that it was the beginning and implementation
Noong 1997 hanggang 1996.
that started,
ng JICA o Japan International,
and it was funded by the JICA, or the Japan International Cooperation Agency, as a loan.
Ang Kaliwa Kanan Dam,
The Kaliwa Kanan Dam
masuportahan na
aims to
malaking
support
kawalan
or
ng tubig
augment the huge lack of
para sa
drinking
mga mamayan sa
and potable water of Manila residents
probinsya nito.
and its nearby provinces.
Patupad ng MWSS
This is going to be implemented
sewerage system
by the Metropolitan Water Sewerage System,
OSCC o Office of
partnership
Communities na siyang may
with the Office of the Cultural Communities,
sa mga
that has the mandate to ensure the basic rights
sa lahat
and
ng
welfare of the national minorities,
pagkakataong nasasangkot ang
at
mga
all
katutubong
times that the
bayan sa
indigenous
mga
people are
proyektong
involved in development
kaunlaran tulad
projects
ng Kaliwakanan Dam.
such as the
Ang
Kaliwakanan Dam.
MWSS ang pangunahing
The
magtitiyak sa pagtatayo
MWSS
ng
will
dalawang
primarily
diversion
ensure
tunnel
the
sa
construction
ilog ng Laiban
of the two
na sa
diversion
Cloud
tunnels
Coast.
along the Laiban River in
May 7
Tanay.
barangay ng mga katutubong remontado
There are
Dumagat
7 barangays or villages of the indigenous
na
Remontado
bumibilang
Dumagat
5,000 kapamilya
comprising of
taong ito.
15,000
Napatigil
individuals
ang
who
pagtatayo
are presently
ng
directly
dam
affected.
pangunahin sa
The
malakas na
construction of the
protesta
dam
at
was
pagkaisa
stopped primarily due to
paglaban
the
ng mga
strong
katutubong
unity and
remontado
opposition of the
na sa
indigenous
kalaunan ay ang
Remontado,
pagpapatalsik
and
sa diktadurang
eventually
Marcos
led
sa
to the
Malacanang
downfall of
noong
the Marcos
1986.
dictatorship from Malacanang in 1986.
Napalitan ng presidente ni Cory Aquino na walang
Cory Aquino
paggalaw
assumed
sa
the
usaping
presidency
dam at
and didn't
tumutok ito
revive
sa
the dam issue
pagpapalaganap ng open
and
democracy
focused
mula
instead
sa
on the
mahabang
democratic
panahon ng
space from the
panunupil ni
long
Marcos.
period of
Subalit hindi
repressive
ito
Marcos
ang
rule.
mga katutubong remontado
However, the
sa
indigenous
sasagawa ng
Remontado
ibang aktibidad
continued with
sa
their different
pagpapatuloy
activities
ng pakikipag-ugnayan at
for the
pagpapalaganap
continuing
ng isyung dam,
coordination and
hanay ng mga
dissemination
taong
about the dam
simbahan,
issue among the
profesional,
ranks of church
estudyante,
people,
mga
students,
magsasaka at
professionals,
manggagawa
workers,
na
and
siyang
peasants
batayang
who
sektor
are
ng
the basic
ng
sectors in
Pilipino.
Philippine society.
Dito na itatag ang kauna-unahan naming pagkakaisa.
This was when the first unity
Remontado
was
Dumagat,
established among the
ang
indigenous
organisasyon ng
Remontado
mahal
Dumagat
ang organisasyon ng kaisahan ng mga katutubo sa Sierra Madre
under the unity of the
nakasabayan
indigenous
ding
people of the Sierra
naitatag
Madre,
ang mga
which was
organisasyon
simultaneously
ng Dumagat
founded
sa
with the
Aurora
organization
at
of
ng
the
mga
Alta
AGTA
Dumagat of
sa
Aurora
Quezon
Province and
Province.
the Agta Dumagat of Quezon Province.
Noong 1992,
1992
next slide po. So 1992 hanggang 98
till
sa ilalim ng
1998 under the
economic platform na Philippine
economic
2000 o ang
platform of Philippines 2000 or the
Presidente
Calabarzon under President
ay
Fidel Ramos,
nasa ilalim ito ng
it was under
proyektong Pacifico City
the project of Pacifico
patuloy na
City,
nagsagawa
which
ng mahabang
continued
karsada o
the
highway
construction of a
na
long highway
magdudugtong mula
that
sa
would
Manila
connect Manila,
patungo o tatagos sa
that
kabundukan
would go
ng Rizal,
through the
Laguna
mountains of Rizal, Laguna,
hanggang sa Quezon.
until Quezon.
At ito rin ay nasasangkot ang Umiray Angat Transbasin Project na kailangan ng Pacific Coast City.
And this involved other projects of the
At
proponents.
sa panahon ding ito ay naisip pribado o naging
This was also the
private
time that they
ang
privatized
MWSS.
the MWSS, the Metropolitan Water
So
System.
sa panahon ni Estrada ay
Under
muling nagbuo ng komite
Joseph Estrada, a committee was formed
update
for the
sa
review,
survey sa mga pamilyang maapektuhan ng
the
dam.
survey of families to be affected by the dam, by the implementation of the dam.
At ganun pa man na merong memorandum para
And
ituloy
there was
ang
also a
Laiban Dam
memorandum that was issued to proceed with the Laiban Dam project.
At gayon din, sa hanay naming mga katutubong dumagat, na organisa ang pang-probinsyal na organisasyon ang Mascada.
The organization's name was changed
Next
to
slide.
Mascada.
Sa panahon ng Presidente Gloria Arroyo, sa ilalim ng kanyang
During the term of President
puno
Gloria
ng
Arroyo,
liberalisasyon na
who
policy
was
sa ilalim ng
the
World
leader of the
Trade
policy of
Organization
liberalization
Structural Agreement Policy
with its framework of the Structural Adjustment Program policy.
matingkad na panahon ni Gloria ang todo gera sa
It
mga
was during the Gloria Arroyo regime
tubong pamayanan.
all-out war
Sabay
against the indigenous communities was heightened,
patakarang liberalisasyon sa mga
alongside
likas
the
na
implementation of the policy of
pangangambkang na mga
liberalization
gayungang
on natural
korporasyon sa
resources,
lupang ninuno ng mga
land
katutubong
grabbing of
mamayan.
ancestral lands by foreign corporations.
Nakapaglabas din ng pag-aaral sa detalyadong plano
They
para
also
sa
came
muling
up with a
pagsasagawa
study
ng
and
Kaliwa
detailed
Dam
plan
o
for the
Laiban
renewed
Dam.
implementation of the Kaliwa Kanan or Laiban Dam.
Sa panahon ding ito, napaslang ang
It was
isa
also during Arroyo's
na si
term
Nicanor Cacano de
when
los Santos,
Nicanor
isang
Cacano de
leader
los Santos,
dumagat na
the
kontra
Dumagat leader
sa Laiban Dam
against the Laiban
noong December
Dam,
8,
was killed
2001.
on
Dahil
December
sa
8,
paghinala ng
2001,
mga armed forces of the
who was
Philippines,
suspected by the armed forces of the
Cacano ay isang
Philippines
triggerman ni
to be the
Gloria
trigger
Arroyo
man,
nang
one of the
siya ay
trigger men
nagbisita
in
sa
the attempted
ng
assassination
Antipolo.
of Arroyo while she was visiting in Antipolo City.
Sa panahon ni Noynoy Aquino o Presidente
During the
Aquino,
term of
may
President Noynoy
pagkakangka
Aquino,
ang isang korporasyon ng
there
San
was an
Miguel
attempt by the
Water
San Miguel
Company,
Bulk Water
subalit
Company,
hindi pumirma sa kontrata
but they
dahil
did
sa
not
malakas
sign
na
the contract
pagsalubong ng
when they were
protesta
met
ng
by the
mga
loud
katutubong
protest
pamayanan.
of the indigenous
Nagkaroon ng isang
communities.
katutubong agtadumagat
There was an indigenous
na tinatawag
Agtadumagat
ng National Commission on Indigenous
who
People
became the NCIP commissioner.
na si Conching Consada, pero
Conching
hindi
Conchada,
nagbigay ito ng clearance on land
who did
dispute
not issue the clearance on land
ang
dispute
usapin ng Kaliwa Kanan
for the
Dam
reopening of
construction
the
sa kabila
Kaliwa Kanan
ng
Dam
umobliga
construction,
ng
despite
NCIP chairperson na si Himada Pawit.
NCIP chairperson Hamada Pawit ordering her to do so,
bilang NCIP commissioner.
until Conching Conchada was removed as NCIP commissioner.
Remontado at
The unified actions of the indigenous Remontado and Agtadumagat continues to oppose any attempts to resume dam construction.
Patunay nito, next slide po.
As proof of this,
Next slide. Patunay nito, ang pagtatayo
of this
ng kampuhan o picket
was a
camp
week-long camp or picket.
sa harapan ng DNR.
It was set up in front of the Department of Energy and Natural Resources
ng mga remontado
that lasted more than a month with a Katribo party list.
At gayon din patuloy ang aming mga kilos protesta sa karsada na kung
We also
saan
continue with our street protest
aming
actions,
sa anumang pagtatangka ng
and we
pagtatayo
are
ng
fighting any attempt
dam na ito.
for the construction of the dam.
Nagkaroon din ng picket kampuhan doon sa harapan ng MWSS na
We also
pinamumuno
had a camp that we set up in front of the MWSS office,
at dito rin naitayo o naitatag ang
where
samahan
we founded or established
katutubong dumagat sa
the
Sierra
regional
Madre
organization of the
ng
national
Masia.
minorities of Southern Tagalog.
2 minutes na lang, Kakay.
Ano po? Okay.
Thank you, Kakai, for a very good and informative presentation.
I'm not finished.
It's not so bad experience.
Tapos na?
Sige, please wrap up pa, Kakay.
Okay. Sa aming mga pagkilos na ito ay mahalaga ang aming pakikipag network.
All these actions, our networking and alliance work is very important.
Kilos, nasa usapin ng lahat ng arena ng pakikipaglaban
We are
sa
considering all arena of struggle,
tulad ng lobbying,
lobbying,
rally,
the picket rally,
mga, sige po, pakitaas ang slides para madali. Submission ng mga petition.
so we also submit petitions.
So, yun. At marami pang iba na kung saan sa
and
panahon
other actions.
ito yung aming ginagawa dahil sa kanyang economic platform na build ay narito yung muling paggawa ng iba't ibang
Under the
dam.
present government, with the
Dito,
Build economic platform, which is being carried out, there's still other dams that are being planned to be constructed and implemented
kasabwat ng China na sinasabing
in connivance with
bill
China,
na siyang utang ng bansang Pilipinas.
which is
Next
surely
slide
to
po.
incur the Philippines a lot of loans and debts.
So, ayan, tuloy-tuloy ang aming kampanya.
So our campaigns are continuing
I-anunsyo ng Presidente Duterte
since
na
the President announced
ay kanyang uumpisahan
that he's going to
ng
start
lahat ng
the
mga
construction of the dams
kawalan
despite
ng FPIC o pre-prop your informed consent, kawalan
the lack or the absence of
assessment,
FPIC,
na kung saan ang mga ito ang niraratsada sa panahon ngayon ng
which are
pandemya,
all being rushed in this time of the pandemic.
na kung saan ang pagproseso ng FPIC ay hindi sinagawa bago pa man magplano ng dam na
They
ito.
have never
Ang mga komunidad ay nahati.
They have never undergone the process of FPIC since the beginning of this renewed plan to
sa
construct the dam.
kombinasyong pag-atake o pag-militarize sa aming komunidad
And
na
our
maraming
communities
mga
are
hit
continuously being militarized.
at napupursang sumurrender na kung saan
Communities are forced to surrender
hanggang sa kasalukuyan.
by the military.
Update na noong nakaraan linggo lamang, mga komunidad na mga remontado sa Rizal.
Just last week, the remontados of Rizal were forced to surrender
Ayon sa pag-construct ng dam
if they're not in favor of the construction of the dam.
at sila ay tinataguri ang terorista
They're
dahil
also tagged as terrorists
construction ng dam.
because they oppose the construction of the dam.
Kaya tuloy-tuloy ang aming mga protesta.
We continue our protests.
Kita na lang natin, mga picture na lang yan. At
I'm showing you the photos of our political actions.
ang isang malapad na
We are
network,
forming a very broad network of support
na nilahukan ng mga taong simbahan,
where church people are involved,
estudyante,
students, and other sectors.
Kaibigang mga nasa
And our friends
representative at ng Senado.
in the Senate also,
At gayon din, para mabigkis kaming muli bilang mga
so that
katutubong
we can be
dumagat.
united as Indigenous
Naglunsad
Dumagats.
kami ng
We launched
Dumagat Day noong nakaraang taon
Dumagat Day
para
the previous year to show our strong protest and opposition
kaliwa kanan
to
laiban
this
lang.
dam project.
Okay, maraming.
Kaya nais ko lang pong pinakahuli.
I would lastly,
Ito yung last. Panawagan namin.
Okay. Thank you very much, Kakay.
Okay.
Naomi, you can take it. You can take over.
Okay, I was simply going to say thank you to Kakai for
Okay.
informative presentation. But I'd like to say sorry for all the problems that you're going through. Who do we have? Thank you again.
Okay, thank you also, Naomi. So we heard speakers from indigenous communities from different regions, from Latin America, from Africa, and from Asia. And we are also glad that we have a speaker from a global organization that has been covering cases of indigenous peoples, of environment and land rights defenders, from the Global Witness, director and co-founder, Patrick Ali.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, well, thank you very much for asking me to join this. Global Witness looks at, well, we challenge the abuses of power, basically to help protect human rights and to secure the future of the planet. We've been, by way of brief introduction, working on the issues of forests for around 25 years in Southeast Asia, in Central and West Africa, and in Central and Southern America. And we realized over that time that we and our partners, we may win a few battles, but we were losing the war against deforestation. We've also been working on the issue of land and environmental defenders for 8 years, since a former colleague of ours, Trut Vuti, who is a forest activist in Cambodia, was murdered in 2012. And at that time, we decided to start documenting how many land and environmental defenders are murdered every year. And we're expanding that to talk about other forms of attacks and criminalization. And we produce an annual report which has actually increased international awareness, I think, of some of the issues that Indigenous peoples and local communities are facing. But what I actually really want to talk about, you know, it's always humbling to hear the struggles that people are going through and the daily threats to their lives, to their safety, to their communities. And as one of the earlier speakers talked about, very often it's companies in conjunction with the support of governments who seem to have more rights than the people who live on the land. And I just wanted to talk about a couple of opportunities that are coming up in Europe and the UK. And I'll go into that in a small amount of detail, but happy to talk about it to anyone beyond that. But as I said earlier, we felt that our strategies on trying to stop deforestation were not working. And so what we've now decided to do is to focus on the people who finance companies that carry out deforestation, because very often in some countries, like Brazil or elsewhere, where the government is not going to be on the side of communities or the environment or us, the banks and the financiers very often are in Europe or in America, and they're people who we can have some influence on. We produced a report last year called Money to Burn, and that documented how just 6 agribusiness companies between 2013 and 2019, operating in the Amazon, in the Congo Basin, and in Papua New Guinea, were backed to the tune of $44 billion by over 300 investment firms. And we're talking about household name banks like Barclays or HSBC and Santander, and the big investment banks like Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, and others. Similarly, a similar approach on land and environmental defenders, and we haven't got so far in this campaign yet, it's quite new, but the research is going on, but the outputs are not yet happening very much. We're looking at the commodity traders, the companies that are trading soy or palm oil or sugar or beef, things that are responsible for land grabbing, for deforestation, and attacks on land and environmental defenders. And again, because the commodities are traded globally, we have more of an influence. And I just one of the messages I want to give in this short presentation is that we all on this call and our communities have a chance of influence here. And what is bringing this together, from our perspective anyway, is next year, the European Union, which is the world's largest economic bloc, is going to be bringing in legislation which will force companies to carry out mandatory due diligence on their supply chains, and especially regarding social harms and environmental harms, specifically deforestation. That law will definitely happen, it will definitely be brought in. But what the law actually looks like, what's actually in it, depends on all of us, because we have a chance to talk to the members of the European Parliament, to talk to the various bureaucrats in Europe, to put our case. And what Global Witness wants, and we're working, I should hasten to add, with over 100 other organisations, this is not just us, we want the law to apply to all businesses, including finance, of all sizes and in all sectors that are importing goods into the European Union. We want all of those businesses, we want the European Union to enforce the fact that all of those businesses have a duty to address the impacts of their supply chains on human rights, on the environment, and on governance. We want them to be forced to carry out due diligence, responsible business conduct, as we're calling it, to prevent, mitigate, monitor, and account for any adverse impacts they have. An important part of this, which will resonate, I know, is the need to consult with all of the relevant stakeholders, including land and environmental defenders, Indigenous peoples, etc., and absolutely enshrine FPIC in this new legislation. And finally, we want all businesses to be liable for any harms that they cause. And when I say liable, I mean both in court, if they're responsible for breaking the law in any way, for human rights abuses, etc., they need to be held accountable for that, which can be done again in the European Union, and also in the form of compensation. If people have lost out, if they need to get money from these companies, and those companies should be paying. There's a strong coalition of organisations, as I mentioned, working on this. Many Indigenous leaders are already involved. I spoke with Sonia Guajajara, who's on the advisory group of IPRI, and she was in the EU last year advocating on this. In addition, the UK, which you may or may not know is leaving the EU, they today published an amendment to the Environment Bill. This is relating to deforestation, to ban companies over a certain size and importing over a certain threshold of timber from using products associated with illegal deforestation, I should say, not just timber, any goods. And again, they'll be required to carry out due diligence. This law is not as good as it could be. It talks about illegal deforestation, and we all know that many countries, not least Brazil and many countries I've worked in elsewhere, the governments have very bad laws, and so there's not much point in endorsing very bad laws relating to this. And I believe Joan Carling, who's on this call, is joining that roundtable. There's a roundtable very shortly with the UK Environment Minister that we've helped organise. And again, we must maintain pressure on the UK parliamentarians for when that law is brought before the Parliament. So I just wanted to say that, because these are things that really depend on everyone on this call and the wider constituency to contribute to. Because if we have, for example, testimonies from Indigenous peoples and local communities about the impacts of particular business sectors or particular companies on their rights, their human rights, their environmental rights, their way of life, we can use that, and they can use that, anyone can do this, but we'll certainly be working very hard in Europe with our partners to get the European Parliament and the UK Parliament to back these laws. And finally, just if there are any other ways that we can help in this regard, we can't do everything, we're quite busy, but of course, please approach me and we'll see what we can do. Thank you very much for giving me the time.
Naomi, can you please unmute your mic? We cannot hear you. Please go ahead, Naomi. Our next speaker, next and last speaker is Pavel Soyanziga. He's a board member of the Indigenous Peoples Rights International and also the chairperson of the board of the International Development Fund of Indigenous Peoples in Russia, and is currently a visiting scholar at Dartmouth College in the US. So can you take it off, Pavel? She will be sharing on issues of Indigenous peoples in Russia.
Спасибо большое, добрый
Thank you very
вечер.
much. Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning, everyone. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to speak at this event, at this very important event. To be honest, I haven't prepared my presentation that would be related only to Russia. I'd like to talk briefly on the issues in Russia. The thing is that beforehand, I was asked just to give a speech that would be a review on the issues of the rights of the indigenous people and business rights. In 2011, as you know, the UN Council established the guiding principles on human rights and business rights, and Professor Raghi conducted this work on business and human rights. And I'd like to talk briefly on this topic because I do understand that today's event is held as one of the events of the work of the joint group. As for the guiding rules, there are three main points. The state should protect indigenous peoples from entrepreneurs, from businesses, and there should be the opportunity to resolve the issues through the court, and the corporations need to observe the human rights, and it means that the businesses should be very careful and they should avoid violations of rights, and they should minimize the negative impact of their activities. And also there is the need to protect the victims by legal activities. As for the UN and the guiding principles, there are both weak and strong points. The main advantage of these principles is that they are the authoritative and the authoritative basis for protecting human rights, and they're supported by the members of the UN, and they're supported by many stakeholders. The guiding principles, they explain the norms, they explain what is expected from the businesses. And these principles were supported by many business associations. And the corporate responsibility for human rights observation became the impetus for the discussion development in terms of the observing of the human rights by companies. And these guiding principles show that the arguments that the companies use sometimes have no basis, and they're not fair, because sometimes companies just say that they do not have any negative impact. And the guiding principles explain that businesses bear responsibility on protecting human rights when they're related to their activities. And the guiding principles also have negative impacts and disadvantages. The guiding principles do not create new obligations of the businesses that would have an illegal force. And also, there is no opportunity to look through the claims that the victims can hand in. And also, the state should regulate the observance of these rules, despite the fact that the principles are respected by tourism, by other systems. There's also another disadvantage. The guiding principles do not include the whole set of rules and norms that are needed to protect human rights, and they are needed to see if the company observes the human rights. But in our work, we need to remember that there are many other norms and principles that are related to human rights, and they are of great importance in order to evaluate the observance of human rights. And here the declaration of protecting Indigenous people's rights is of utmost importance. Today, COVID-19 brings lots of suffering, brings a lot of deaths, and the limitations that are related to the pandemic, they limit our possibilities, and many businesses and states violate the rights of Indigenous peoples. They kill leaders of Indigenous peoples. And today we've heard only about some of the cases, and we know about many other examples around the world, and our colleagues are conducting research. And these are colleagues from ecological, environmental organizations and human rights organizations, and it's great to hear that there are so many examples of good work. And today we can also see the work of the Indigenous Peoples' Rights International, and the world is developing. And of course, there are many other examples of human rights violations, and we've heard about the actions of the European Union from our colleagues today. And I do know that my colleagues are joining all the efforts in order to protect human rights. And they're trying to engage states and businesses in this work. And many environmental organizations, colleagues, continue to work in this direction. And a number of states are taking efforts in order to include these guiding principles into their laws. And for example, recently, the government in Germany has done recently a lot in order for German companies to observe human rights when working abroad, so that the German businesses would follow the supply chain, so that the supply chain would observe human rights. And I also heard the Aboriginal Forum campaign. It's the Russian case. The Indigenous peoples asked a Tesla company not to buy Russian nickel because this action could cause the natural disaster on the territory of Russia. And first, the company should pay for the damage that it caused the Indigenous peoples. And many Indigenous peoples across the world supported this action, and many environmental organizations also supported our actions. And today we are having negotiations with Tesla company, and they showed responsible approach to this issue. And Aboriginal Forum yesterday also applied to the German company Basque, so that it wouldn't work with a nickel company until it pays for all the damage that it caused. Aboriginal Forum started working on the consultations with many European organizations in order to cooperate, so that it would hold negotiations with the company, and so that the rights of the Indigenous peoples would be observed, so that the policies would be the responsible policies. And also, I'd like to say a couple of words that I think are very important for us to achieve the goals, the objectives that were set before us in order to protect our land and territories. First of all, solidarity of Indigenous peoples is of utmost importance. We need to cooperate with environmental and civil organizations. We need to develop partnership and cooperation with the UN agencies, with the governments that take actions in order to protect Indigenous peoples and businesses. Also, I'd like to point out that working with companies, with stakeholders that protect, that rather violate human rights, we need to continue working with them, because there are organizations that ask investors to take a responsible approach and to observe human rights. And we also use courts as a very important platform, and hopefully in the future Indigenous peoples would have the opportunity to apply not only to courts where there are many unfair cases, but also apply to courts in other countries where they can achieve their goals. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pavel. A nice presentation. Sorry, I had forgotten about you. Hope you forgive me. Is that the end?
Yes, we already finished with all the speakers, so you may open it for a few minutes only of few minutes of open forum, because we are already over time. Thank you, Naomi.
I just want to say what I wanted to say earlier about the legislation that is going to be passed by the European Union. I think is very welcome. I was made to understand that was supposed to take place a long, long time ago, but I guess it was forgotten in the interim. But it's good that they are reconsidering, because a lot of suffering that is experienced by Indigenous peoples, seems like all over the world, have to do with money that is sent by Europe to all over the world, and it finds itself in the wrong hands where Indigenous people's rights are violated. So to me, I really welcome the legislation that is going to be passed by the European Union. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, Vicky? Hello?
I noticed also that there have been many questions that were raised in the Q&A. I hope these were responded to, but I'm noticing that there are two questions here for Angelica. There's the regarding if there was free prior informed consent. If you can briefly answer this. Yes, please, Angelica. And then after this, I would like to request the panelists to give like a 1 minute message before we end the webinar. Is Angelica still on? I think she's not on. So maybe Naomi, you can ask already the speakers for their 1 minute message before we end the webinar.
Yeah, I don't know how many speakers are still there, but I can see Pavel, since we gave him the last we let him go last. Maybe Pavel can take a minute to give us a last word. Pavel?
Спасибо большое, Наоми. Ну,
Thank you very much, Naomi. As I already said, today we've heard a number of stories, pleasant stories, tragic stories to some extent, about the violations of indigenous people's rights all over the world. First of all, I would like to speak to the representatives of indigenous communities. Obviously, we need to continue our work, our human rights work, and defend our rights, because nobody is going to do it for us. As Patrick has said, and as I have mentioned, we have numerous venues to take advantage of, and we must do that. I would like to thank co-panelists, and highlight that the solidarity with civic society, with different organizations, is a way to achieve our goals and defend our rights. I would like to wish everyone luck in this challenging work, especially in these challenging times. I hope that our future collaboration and exchange of experience will continue. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for very nice, encouraging words. Shall we give a moment to Kakai Tolentino?
Yes. Manarluchi.
Nandito ako.
Okay. Dahil ang bundok Sierra Madre ay aming
Because the Sierra Madre Mountain is our home.
Parmasya, hospital, liwasan,
It's our
kabuhayan,
hospital.
buhay.
It's our livelihood and our life, our survival.
Mawawala rin ang aming katauhan bilang mamayan.
Our identity as citizens will be gone.
Mawawala ang lupa at kalikasan.
As indigenous peoples, if this will disappear, we shall be gone.
Pakikibaka ng mga katutubong dumagat o katutubong mamayan. Ang lupa, rekurso,
land, resources, and self-determination are what we are going to struggle for. The ancestral land which shall be defended and protected.
International solidarity.
This is why international solidarity is truly important.
Salamat.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay. Who else do we have? Jackson, still there?
Yes.
Okay, please take a minute to tell us, give us your last words.
Okay. In fact, I wish to thank the organizers of this webinar for giving an opportunity actually to discuss and share the challenges that we are experiencing as indigenous peoples worldwide. And it is actually time for us to work closely to support one another and build strong energies that can actually protect our indigenous peoples. Mostly in most of our countries, issues of policies are very crucial, and therefore our continued negotiation, discussion together will build our capacity in terms of engaging with the governments in these policy formations. There is also what we call the business and binding treaty on business and human rights. I think it is very important for us to look at it and see what avenues we can actually use to push for the policies on indigenous peoples. This is to make sure that the language is strongly advocating for the indigenous peoples' rights, and also protect our cultural and traditional resources. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackson. Who else do we have? Does Patrick, do you want to say something?
Yes, thank you very much, Naomi. Yes, I'd like to thank IPRI for existing. I think it's fantastic that there's an organisation that is led by Indigenous people that's getting the prominence it has. I think that's really important. I would like to thank all the panelists and everyone who came along to this, and to re-emphasize the points that most of you have made about international solidarity, and for our part, we'll work with you as best we can to re-emphasize the importance of this law in Europe. How good the law is depends on all of the work that we put into it now, and the demands we can make. It's much easier to get a good law in the first place than change it later. And if we get a good law in Europe, it will influence other trading blocs. So hopefully it will have, we've seen this in other areas, a multiplier effect. Yeah, that's it from me. Thank you very much indeed for asking me.
Thank you, Patrick. Encouraging. Who else do we have? Can't remember. Do you have any more panelists still around?
Monica, I think, is still around.
Monica. Or do we give Monica? Monica, are you still there?
Yes, I can hear
please,
you.
take a minute.
Sure, thank you, Naomi.
All right.
Well, in the current situation, we don't have options but to defend our land and strengthen the solidarity between among Indigenous peoples and the network, including the CSOs and Indigenous organization. And it is also important for Indigenous peoples, as long as you can be part of the decision making, especially on the regulations. Please take part of, in that, because it will affecting your rights. So if you can be part of the decision making process, then please take part of that. If you cannot, you can do other things like campaign, and you can do demonstration, all of those things. But in the middle of COVID-19, please make sure that you follow the health protocol. So keep defending your rights, and then strengthen the solidarity. Thank you, Naomi.
Thank you, Monica. So I can't really see who else is there.
We can try again, Angelica.
Joyce, do you want to say something?
No, we can try Angelica.
Sorry? Vicky? Are we done? Hello, Vicky?
Yes, I think Angelica is no longer on the line, but we would like to thank everyone for joining this webinar. As discussed by all our speakers, there are so many issues of Indigenous peoples worldwide, from displacements to criminalization to issues of energy and construction of dams and other extractive industries, even in the time of COVID. And we also have listened to them that there are still ongoing struggles of Indigenous peoples, and they are still moving forward with their assertion of the rights. And they need support of organizations like Global Witness and other international organizations to bring their struggles to the international level and call the attention of their respective governments. So we thank also thank you for attending. We have mentioned in the chat box that you can contact the Indigenous Peoples Rights International in the website. You can also send us an email if you have any cases, you have any issues that you want to discuss to discuss with us, or that you would want us to coordinate with or collaborate in terms of advocacy, especially in the international and the regional level. We would also like to thank the interpreters for a very good job at interpreting in 3 languages, 4 languages even. And we would also like to invite you to a webinar tomorrow that is on access to justice and Indigenous people's rights in the context of business and human rights. It's happening at 3 o'clock p.m. Geneva time. So thank you very much, and please take time to answer the survey or leave your feedback on the chat box.